Deck.
Intensity is not a curfew.
Oh, mercy.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oriole Park at Camden Yards, the site of this rivalry of proximity. Orioles and Nationals, battle of the Beltways, the MASN Cup, whatever term you want to use for it. Two-game series begins tonight. Orioles coverage on MASN, Nationals coverage on MASN 2. Welcome into MASN All Access, brought to you by your local authorized Mercedes-Benz dealers. I'm your host, Paul Mancano. We've got a good show for you today. We've got Jamal Collier of MLB.com. He's going to talk about Anthony Rendon on the Nationals side and his impact at the Nationals Youth Academy. We're also going to talk to the two on-field reporters for the Orioles and the Nationals, Sarah Perlman and Alex Chappell. But first, let's take a look at the pitching matchup for tonight. For those hoping for a Max Scherzer versus John Means matchup, unfortunately not to be. Instead, we've got Asher Wojciechowski and Austin Voth. Now, both these guys have ERAs over 5.5. Wojciechowski making just his third start of the year, Voth making his fourth start of the year and his first career start against the Orioles. Wojciechowski, meanwhile, his first two starts with the O's, he racked up 6 strikeouts in each of those first two. And Voth, the 27-year-old, all 3 of his previous starts for the Nationals resulted in losses. Hoping for a better result today as the Orioles and Nationals take on each other at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. Now, this is a rivalry that goes back to 2006. Take a look at some of the recent history of this rivalry, because it seems like with each passing year, the rivalry grows just a little bit as the fan bases shift in their own ways. So the Nats last year took the bulk of the games, 5-1. They also swept the Orioles at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. But the Orioles hold the overall advantage, 45-40, in those 85 games. In terms of series wins, the Orioles hold the advantage there as well, 7 compared to the Nationals' 3. And the Orioles, for a while there, were dominating the Battle of the Beltways. They won 5 straight season series from 2012 to 2016. They also lead the all-time series at Oriole Park at Camden Yards, 22-13. And as mentioned, this rivalry goes back to 2006. Now, Alex Chappell and Sarah Perlman are each other's counterparts, on-field reporters for the Nationals and the Orioles. So we decided to get both of them together now that they're both in town in Baltimore and ask them a few questions and play a little fun game. Take a look. We're now joined on MASN All Access by both on-field reporters for MASN, Sarah Perlman for the Orioles and Alex Chappell for the Nats. Guys, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
We're going to be playing a little game in just a bit called Fair or Foul. That's why we're near the foul pole and, of course, the MASN All Access sign. Had to get that in there at some point. Sarah, you have connections with the Nationals, having covered this team recently. And Alex, you grew up in the Maryland area, so you know the O's from being close to them. What is it like for both of you guys to be covering the Battle of the Beltway series?
Yeah, Sarah, you kick.
Well, for me, I think it's fun. I'm taking it first because this is our home field. No, it's really fun. In all seriousness, it was really great covering the Nationals for 2 seasons, and now, of course, my first season covering the Orioles as the on-field broadcaster. But, you know, just walking in, saying hi to a bunch of people, and I've known Alex, of course, because she used to even cover the Rays. So really small world, and it's fun to be here and, of course, play the team across the road.
Yeah, no, this is really, really fun. Coming up 495 today, I mean, you get excited. You see all the things on social media. People are talking trash. So I think it's just, it adds to the rivalry. You see it in other, New York, you have the Subway series. So it's always fun to be part of things like this.
Absolutely. It is a special rivalry that is still fairly new, but it seems like it becomes a more and more of a rivalry every season as these two fan bases grow. All right, so we got the foul pole in the back. And I've got a series of takes that I'm going to give you guys, and you tell me if it's fair or foul of a take and step across that line.
Okay.
The two Treys, Trey versus Trey.
Ooh.
Here's the take. Trey Turner will finish with a higher batting average than Trey Mancini by season's end. Fair or foul?
Oh, I'm going foul on that one.
Now, they're both hitting in the 280s at this point.
Trey Mancini will have a better batting average.
No. Fair. Trey Turner, ever since coming back from the IL, you know it was going to take time for him to find his groove, find his rhythm. He's done just that. 5 of his last 6 games, he continues to be consistent. he's finishing with a much higher batting
Whoa.
average.
Here is my rebuttal for that. Trey Mancini going into the All-Star break was hitting over 300. He was hitting 310 for the first 2.5 months of the season. Right now, he is 0 for 24, which is unfortunately his worst, how do I want to say
Stretch
that?
of the season.
Stretch
Yeah.
of his career, actually. But
Yeah.
he's working on it, so once he snaps out of that, I think he's actually going to finish with a 295, 300 batting average. Trey Turner, I don't know. Good on base percentage or something, but I'm taking Trey Mancini on the batting
Wow.
average.
All right. Both could be described as all-star snubs,
Coming
I
out
think.
swinging.
These two are going to go at it. This is going to be great.
I'm feeling very feisty today.
All right, another question for you guys. You cover a team in the AL East, and you used to cover a team in the AL East in the Tampa Bay Rays. The AL East is the hardest division, toughest division in baseball, fair or foul?
Fair.
Sarah's going over to fair. Alex,
I'm
going to
sticking
stay
with
there?
Sarah. I'm going with fair.
Okay.
You look at
I say second is NL East, actually, as of right now. There's a lot of good teams, but
Yeah.
AL East, not even a question.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Yankees, Rays, Red Sox, all of them have over 50 wins.
Yeah.
You don't see that in any other division, that 3 of the top teams have that many wins. So kind of hard to argue with that. Plus, if the Red Sox were in any other division, they would be in first place.
100%.
That's true.
So
Yeah,
I got to
I think-
stick with
Yeah.
fair on this one, AL East.
I think
That
so
is true.
too. She said it all.
All right,
Sorry, guys.
National League, American League question here. The universal DH is bad for baseball, fair or foul?
Such a good
Wow.
question.
Foul.
Big fan of the Universal DH.
Of course, the American League side. How come?
It's not even a question, in my opinion. I think baseball's more exciting. I think, one, not only does it add more jobs and a lot of players have more opportunities, but two, everyone wants to see home runs, more hits, higher batting average, whatever nowadays. I think it
Yeah.
makes the game more exciting. And pitchers are going to get hurt if they keep stepping in the box. So not even a question, in my opinion. Universal
Alex,
DH for the
you
win.
saying fair?
Solid argument. I'm going to stay fair because when you have a team like the Nationals where you have pitchers like Strasburg, Scherzer,
Yeah.
Corbin who show they can hit, it adds a different dynamic to the game. It's fun. They're not an automatic out. And then plus for opposing pitchers, they get really frustrated on
Totally.
the mound
True.
when they can't get one of the pitchers out. So
Yeah.
I think it's all about, it adds a different dynamic with strategy. It's fun to watch pitchers who can hit.
Yeah, cases to be made for both. And definitely Scherzer would agree with you there,
Yeah.
Alex.
Every
I
pitcher
gotta
thinks they
say-
can hit. That's probably the
That's
best
true.
part, no matter what team you're on. I mean, you look at Dylan Bundy. He told
Yeah.
me he's a switch hitter, and at any time they need an opportunity when they're playing the National League, he tells Brenton Hine to put him in.
There
So
we go.
I see both sides.
Yeah.
When Patrick Corbin came to the Nationals, he looked at Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez and said, I can hit. So
This
Good
is
deal.
why we have you guys
Good
on.
deal.
You guys know all of the ins and outs of both these teams. All right, so something that is unique to the mustard, relish, and ketchup
What
up
is
on the
that?
scoreboard. And the Nationals
Hot
have
dog
the
race.
president's race with the 4
Yeah.
presidents running down the outfield. So my question for you guys is, the take is that the hot dog race is better than the president's race, fair or foul?
I'm going to stay in foul, actually.
Yeah.
I
Really?
and I'm going to get in trouble
yes.
for saying this. Do I love the hot dog race? Absolutely. But I think it's really funny when you watch people in these insane costumes that are extremely heavy, because one time I was in one of them.
Yes.
Run. So you know what? I'll go with Alex on this one.
yeah, president's race. You look
Yeah.
forward to it every game. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, that's, I mean, until we get actual hot dogs running down the field, then I think
See,
you gotta
then
stay
it's
with that.
easy. It's obviously going to
They
be the
do
hot
that
dogs.
in Milwaukee.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Pitch it to the Orioles today. I like your idea.
There we
Paul.
go. All right, another Baltimore versus DC style question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Georgetown cupcakes are better than crab cakes.
I'm staying in foul.
Staying in foul?
Crab cakes are so much better than Georgetown cupcakes. Absolutely not.
I'm staying
Crab
staying
cake.
here
Really?
in foul.
Yes.
I've heard Georgetown cupcakes perhaps a little overrated. That's what I've heard.
Overrated.
Is that
Oh, whoa, that's harsh. They are super, super good.
Yeah.
But
Compared to the
crab
crab cakes,
cakes,
Yeah.
overrated,
yeah,
and Maryland
crab
has the
cakes in
best crab
football.
fair.
cakes.
That's what
So
Maryland does.
Yeah, that
That's
is
good.
exactly right. All
That's
right.
good. I see you, Bobby.
The Nats side of things, they have Take On Me, which they play during the 7th inning stretch, which has come back and in and out of fashion at the Nationals Park. Something that has stayed at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. Thank God I'm a country boy during the 7th inning stretch.
Wait, what's
so
your question?
Take On Me is better than
stay.
Thank God I'm a country boy. Fair or foul?
I love to thank God I'm a country boy. Everyone gets involved. It's really fun.
Yep.
And I think the fact that they stuck with it for so long says a lot. And the fans every time get into it. Thank
Yeah.
God I'm a country boy. Much better.
Alex?
I mean, make the same argument for Take On Me. Take on me.
I'm not
I mean,
gonna
there's
sing,
nothing
so
We're going to get
Take
that
that
gets
one.
everybody
because
going,
that sounded
right? Oh, yeah.
exactly like it. That was perfect.
Just like it, just like it. No,
Yeah.
it's really fun. And like Sarah said, you love it when the crowd gets involved. That's
Yeah.
the biggest thing. When everybody's singing, jumping around, gets you hyped.
Yeah.
It's great.
Now, both of these towns boast famous Olympic swimmers, Michael Phelps from Baltimore and Katie Ledecky, the young gold winner from D.C. Katie Ledecky is a better swimmer than Michael Phelps, fair or foul. She is a lot younger, a lot less decorated.
Going fair.
Girl power.
That's what I'm doing.
There we go.
I'd love to see a female like her, and she's
Yeah.
just an absolute stud. One
Yeah.
of my favorite athletes, actually, of all time. So I'm going with Katie Ledecky here.
Yeah, Alex?
Love it. I'm sticking with Sarah's argument
Good call.
here.
Good call.
What's your
All
call,
right.
Paul?
It's tough. It is tough. I think Ledecky, at the end of her career, she could have more gold medals than Michael Phelps, which would be ridiculous. All right, final one for you guys here. Battle of the Beltways. Is it an actual, legit rivalry at this point, fair or foul?
Fair.
Fair.
100%. I think you look at, you always hear Maryland versus Virginia, that D.C., Baltimore. Even when the Baltimore Colts left, Baltimore fans weren't going to become Redskins fans. That was a whole thing when the Nationals came to town. Who would leave the O's? No, you still had really loyal O's fans, and then a new fan base in Virginia come up to support the Nats. So I got to say, it's a huge rivalry. I can't wait.
I think so, too. And it's an exciting rivalry, especially for us. We've both kind of covered both teams a little bit in the sense of you followed the AL East, and I've kind of covered both teams that I don't think the players necessarily don't like each other or it's anything like that. I think they're friends. But when you look at the coaching staff, and even Brandon Hyde and Davey Martinez are familiar with each other now from the Cubs, and just the fans in itself, I think it's super exciting because you could obviously kind of go either way with which team you're going to support. But I think the Baltimore fans that stayed loyal to the Orioles, legit rivalry.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's now getting to be even in terms of wins and losses, too. It's 45-40 in favor of the O's, but it could. Last year we saw the Nats won 5 out of the 6 games. You never know. It could shift.
They're about to sweep here.
That's an official
Hot take.
Fair
Hot
foul
take.
for that one, Sarah.
I'm going foul.
Going foul
all the
for
way
that
over
one.
here and dropping the mic. See you guys later.
I should knock on wood, right?
Yeah, exactly. Alex Chappell and Sarah Perman, guys, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Paul.
Catch them on MASN 2 for the Nationals and on MASN for the Orioles tonight.
Tough day for us, saying goodbye to Cash, he was terrific for us all year. Linchpin in the rotation and in the clubhouse.
Good for Andrew Kashner. Happy for him. He was phenomenal for me, for the coaching staff, for the players. He's an ultimate team guy, ultra pro. Unbelievably competitive and was a huge help, not only for me but for everybody else. And wish him the best. And except when we face him,
we've made no secret of the fact that we're eyeing our broad long-term strategy, which is getting the best young talent that we can from every angle.
We're realistic about where we are and about possible movement and about things that are, we're a million miles away from being where we're going to be here.
Helio Prado, in particular, is off to a really good start in the Dominican Summer League. Now, those are complex leagues. The stats can be misleading. A lot can change. But he's a center fielder with some pop. Runs well. He's been stealing bases. We've had eyes on him that like what they see, and we'll see what we get. There's a lot of development ahead for him. And Romero is an infielder, has the capability to move around different positions. Been playing mostly third base this year, but we think he's got a shot to develop as a shortstop and making pretty good contact with pop as well. I think the Red Sox gave him some money too. So, we'll see what we get. Obviously, it'll take several years to find out what we've got with these guys, but I do feel like that age group and that pipeline is something we wanted to bolster and give a jolt to, and this helps with that.
So you just heard from Brandon Hyde and Mike Elias talking about the Andrew Kashner trade on MASN All Access. And now we switch over to the Nats side, and we've got Jamal Collier of MLB.com joining us. Jamal, thanks so much for coming down to Oriole Park at Camden Yards.
Hey, thanks for having me. I always love coming here. It's a lot of different view than Nats Parks.
Very different view. Yeah, very different view. So, Jamal, you wrote an awesome piece the other day on nationals.com and MLB.com talking about Anthony Rendon, who did not go on the trip to Cleveland for the All-Star game, but he did spend his time doing other great stuff with the Nationals Academy. How did this piece come about? How did you know that he was going to be making this trip to the Nationals Academy instead of going to Cleveland?
Yeah, it's just a story I've been kind of working on and been thinking about for a while, probably sometime last year. Rendon is very involved in the Nats Youth Academy, and it's just something that has kind of just interested me about him, pretty much for years now. And since last year, I kind of broached the idea of saying, hey, one day when you go and spend some time at the Academy, can I come with and just hang out? And if you know Rendon, he's just not the most media friendly or media averse person. He just kind of, as the piece kind of gets into, he just has this weird kind of relationship with fame. game, and with the idea that him as a baseball player doesn't mean he's special or anything out of the ordinary. And it took a while for him to kind of get warmed up to the idea, and just also to find out kind of the scheduling conflict. So really the better part of this year we had been talking, going back and forth, and then once he kind of made the decision to not necessarily go to the All-Star game but also to stay back in DC, he came up to me and mentioned that he was going to go to the academy, that I can come tag along, and it was I just got to kind of sit there and watch him and interact and play with the kids for probably an hour, and then we sat down, him, his wife, and his daughter Emma, who was about 1.5 years old, was kind of crawling around the conference room. So we talked for probably about 45 minutes to an hour, and it was one of the more, again, Rendon is not a guy who I think doesn't like a lot of interviews, doesn't like a lot of attention on himself, but it was kind of one of the real times away from the field and kind of away from everything that they just kind of have a real kind of conversation about him and let it kind of let him steer to wherever he was going to go.
Yeah, and we obviously know that he is not the most talkative in front of the media, obviously, but you had him in that kind of setting, and it seems like he is really at home when he's working with these kids and when he's out there. What kind of sense of, did you get to see his personality shine through even more when he was dealing with these kids?
Exactly. I mean, it was, when he's on the baseball field and we see him kind of at Nationals Park, he looks so kind of smooth and easy, and, everything just him looks kind of so natural. And I think that was just almost amplified when you put him on the field, with these All-Stars who won. I think the one thing that struck me is this wasn't a guy who seems like he pops in every now and then, and it kind of know, but not really. This very much was like, oh, Anthony's back. And it was kind of seamless from the beginning as the way that he had a huge smile on his face. He hit, he ran the bases, he threw the ball at people like it was a dodgeball. He joked around with people. He had inside jokes that some of the kids would come up to him with. It was just it was really just fun to see him interact this way. And I think Jennifer Carlin, who is one of the heads of the Nats Academy in the piece, kind of says that this is really somebody to look up to, and it's a big brother, and it's not a guy who kind of drops in or just kind of writes a check, and that's kind of the extent of his charity. He does spend his time, and I think that was the thing too that also draws me. A guy who Rendon, who's so private, who likes to kind of be away and have his family time. The few times that he does decide to make time and go out of his way to do something, I was kind of just intrigued to say, what is it about this that makes you want to be here on your time off when you didn't go to this kind of All-Star game, the first All-Star game you've ever been invited to? And he kind of admitted also that he worried about would he ever get invited back to one, or just kind of was he missing out on some kind of experience. Still, the idea that he chose to be at the Nats Academy over that, which is really fascinating to me, and it was kind of a lot of fun to do. Yeah,
he walks the walk, absolutely. Are there any interesting little nuggets that weren't brought up? The story is absolutely chock full of great stories about Rendon, but are there anything that you maybe couldn't make the article that stuck out to you?
There was a lot of things that I kind of wanted to put, and we just, like I said, the conversation steered and turned and went a lot of different ways. There's a little bit about the Tom Brady stuff that he said kind of fascinated me, and it was very unprompted and out of the blue, and we went on this kind of whole conversation about happiness, and happiness is the way this kind of the target moves, and we got into some of it's kind of into his faith, and we talked about just kind of the way that has impacted him, and there was just a lot of stuff there that was interesting that I could have written a whole part 2 or a whole different section in there that my editors would have yelled at me even more about about the length it was getting to. But I think there was just a lot of fascinating things in there, and I think that I try to capture exactly this kind of complex person who, again, the idea that he does not really believe he's special and doesn't want any kind of extra attention or fame because he happens to be one of the best baseball players in the world. And the idea of the flip side of that is he's just, as long as he keeps playing the way he is and keeps doing the kind of things that he's done, especially the last couple of years and through the first half, he's only going to get more and more and more recognition, and it's going to be interesting to see him kind of deal with that.
Yeah, and I just love the tweet that the Nationals Academy had put out that said no place he'd rather be on All-Star Game. I think the next piece you should write about Anthony Rendon should be his detailed thoughts on the Russell Westbrook-Chris Paul trade. He's a Houston Rockets
We
fan.
talked a lot of NBA free agency as well, and I was like, we are getting way off course.
He probably has some hot takes.
There's
on
a lot
that
of
too.
takes.
Yeah, Jamal Collier of MLB.com. You can check out his article on Anthony Rendon at the Nationals Youth Academy. It's pretty awesome. Before we get out of here, we should remind you we do have a podcast. Myself and Bobby Blanco are the two hosts. You can catch our podcast on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you can find podcasts. You can find the MASN All Access podcast. Trades were the topic of both the Orioles and the Nationals podcasts this week. On the O's side, we talked about Andrew Kashner and his deal to the Red Sox, the impact that that's going to have on the O's rotation. And on the Nats side, we talked about potential trade targets for the Nationals bullpen, and we also talked to Jeff Kirchin, who called the All-Star Celebrity Softball game back in Cleveland last week. Exciting stuff on both podcasts, so take a listen to that. That just about does it for MASN All Access. Don't forget, both games tonight are in the same place and on 2 different networks. O's game, O's coverage, starting at 6:30 on MASN, and Nats coverage on MASN 2, also at 6:30. That does it for MASN All Access, brought to you by your local authorized Mercedes-Benz dealer. Thank you to Jamal Collier, Sarah Perlman, Alex Chappell, Bobby Blanco, Brendan Mortensen, Amy Jennings, and Cam Hasbrook. We'll see you later.